The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the first inaugural episode of the Bayou Bengal Bites, brought to you by Belly Up Sports, kind of a spin-off from the Sports Scramble podcast that we do every week. I'm your host, Chet. I've got Tyler joined with me. We wanted to just talk purely LSU. We talk it all the time on the podcast, but we wanted to have a dedicated video to just bring you everything happening in LSU sports this week. So we figured, hey, let's do a little Bayou Bengal Bites. Thanks to Snapchat AI for coming up with the name. Tyler, how you doing?
Doing good. Good to be here and to talk all things LSU sports.
Exactly. So we got a little rundown of some topics we're going to start with. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into things. So the first one we're going to talk about is Hailey Van Lith is officially a Tiger, announced this morning, Thursday when we're recording this show. She will be transferring from Louisville. She was Louisville's all-star, averaging almost 20 points a game, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists, paired up with Angel Reese now. Caitlin Clark's like yin to her yang after all the drama in the postseason and the March Madness tournament. Tyler, what's your thoughts on this? And, are we repeating already in year 3 of Kim Mulkey?
It's sure looking like Kim Mulkey is trying to get up to the Skip Bertman level and making a 90s run type of baseball, just winning a couple of national championships and maybe a possible back-to-back. But this is definitely a huge get. Van Lith was really receiving a lot of traction. I was hearing a lot of things that the smoke was getting real, that Hailey Van Lith was going to be a Tiger. There's also another big visit that Kim Mulkey is going to be going through this weekend. It's Anisha Murrow, a DePaul transfer. So that's also going to be a big get. And also, you look at the returning starters. You have Flau'jae Johnson. Not only she's a good rapper, but she's a really good basketball player. We saw she went up against she went up against some of the top shooters in the league. You have Angel Reese, obviously the double-double machine. Then you also have some key girls coming off of the bench as well. Kateri Poole is going to be coming back. Last year, Poa is going to be coming back as well. You are going to be losing some key pieces, obviously, to LaDasia Williams. That's why Murrow would be a big get to be that LaDasia Williams replacement. Obviously, you're losing Alexis Morris. That's going to be a big loss, but you're going to be replacing her with Hailey Van Lith. Hailey Van Lith is probably going to be your point guard, while Flau'jae Johnson is going to be the 2. And then you'll have everyone else fill in that. So this is definitely a huge get. It seems like everybody who's the head coach at Baton Rouge is doing well on the recruiting trail, especially Kim Mulkey.
NIL is playing a huge part, I think, into LSU's success in transfer portal across all sports. And Kim Mulkey is not scared of it. She's embraced the NIL era. She's running with it. Would you say? I saw a poll on Twitter today. Out of Scott Woodward's most recent hires, Kim Mulkey, Jay Johnson, Brian Kelly, and Matt McMahon, is Kim Mulkey the most successful hire out of the 4 so far? Especially with the championship, obviously. But
yeah, I think for now, obviously, it would have to be Kim Mulkey. We'll have to wait and see if Jay Johnson's squad can win it all and hoist that 7th national championship. But just look at what Kim Mulkey has done. In year 1, they went to the second round of the NCAA tournament. They lost to Ohio State. And then you go to this year, they're picked second in the SEC behind South Carolina. They ended up losing to South Carolina, and they did end up getting second in the SEC. But I just don't think that anyone had this vision of winning a national championship at a program like LSU. If you remember the last head coach, they really weren't really consistent. They haven't been consistent since the Simone Augustus teams in '05 and '06. But now you're starting to see some consistency built in Baton Rouge. And Kim Mulkey has already been hinting at it. Maybe we get a brand new PMAC. Maybe they renovate it. Maybe they just knock it down. And especially if they win a back-to-back national championship, I think that winning a national championship has sped up the process. So I think it's going to be, every now and then we'll probably see a plan of renovation. So I think that for sure Scott Woodward's A+ hire so far has been Kim Mulkey, but I think that Brian Kelly as well has done a terrific job at what he saw in year one. I think that Jay Johnson is also a great analytical guy, and he's also a great recruiter as well.
For sure. Hey, she keeps pulling in these big recruits, getting that NIL money. They're just going to write her a blank check, say, name the PMAC after you, and let's just keep it rolling. You mentioned Jay Johnson, so let's get into our next topic. LSU finally had its first sweep of the season in SEC play, taking down the Ole Miss Rebels. I don't know, the Black Bears. I don't know what we can really technically call them. But of course, Paul Skeens started our Friday night game, and I think he had 11 strikeouts. LSU went on to win that game 7-3, and a huge surprise and huge, honestly, just momentum builder for Ty Floyd on Saturday, winning 8-4. He had 8 strikeouts. Really, he must have heard all the criticism about how we had no pitching staff after Ty Floyd, and he put those questions to bed. Came out there and just shoved on Saturday. Game 3, we needed some magic. We ended up taking this thing 7-6. Was not really a walk off, but it made Morgan Wallen lose his voice by home run by Hayden Travinski to win that game. But I think he kind of secured that Sunday starter spot with Christian Little. So Tigers, they get the first sweep against the reigning national champs who have just had a really bad year this year. But Tyler, what's your takeaway from Oxford this weekend?
Yeah, I definitely think my biggest takeaway of the weekend has to be the Saturday and Sunday starters really coming to life. Paul Skeens did get roughed up again, but I think he's going to be fine. I mean, he got 13 strikeouts in game number 1, let up a bomb. I mean, saying a quote like he did in the press conference, saying there's not going to be many beer showers in Ole Miss. There was about 4 of them.
Come against them
I don't know if you can count that as many or not, but he's still one of the greatest pitchers. He's going to be right behind Dylan Cruz in the MLB draft. The Pirates will probably take Cruz, and then the Nationals will probably go with Paul Skeens. But you got to give all your credit. If we had our Tiger of the Week, it would be Ty Floyd because he really had it with a dominating factor. And really the only mistake that he made was giving up that 3-run home run to Kemp Alberman late in the game. But he was able, after that, really lock in. And it's crazy. When you throw strikes, you can do well. And that's exactly what Christian Little and Ty Floyd did. We saw Christian Little on Sunday. He really looked phenomenal once again. If you go back to the Kentucky series, the first 3 innings, he was perfect baseball. And then after that, he lit up 4 straight walks, got the bases loaded, and then really dealt with fire against that Kentucky squad, but they were able to win that. And then they were able to get some magic again. I mean, this bullpen continues to have some issues, especially with the injuries. We saw and learned that Chase Shores is going to be done for the season, maybe even next season as well. Garrett Edwards is still in question mark. There's some rumors that he's having potential surgery as well. But you're also seeing guys step up, like, Riley Cooper coming out of the bullpen as well. Zach Collins has also come out of the bullpen as well. I mean, he just throws curveball after curveball after curveball. Yeah. But I think that the man in the bullpen has been not only there has been the 2 freshmen, Gavin Guidry and also Griffin Herring as well. I think that Griffin Herring is going to be a starter coming next year once you lose Paul Skeens. I think that he's going to insert to maybe potentially even the Friday night role, depending on what Little and Floyd does, if they go to the MLB draft or not. But I think that Gavin Guidry, not only is he's going to be an effective shortstop in his career, but I think he's going to be a phenomenal pitcher as well. So this was a definitely much needed series. If you look at the standings, we saw Arkansas, they got swept by Georgia. So that really opens up the door for LSU to really take control of the SEC West. Then we saw Tennessee sweep Vanderbilt. That opens up the door for the Tigers to also take the SEC title. So I think that if LSU continues to handle their business, they'll be a top 8 national seed, and you'll have postseason baseball at the box going on the road to Omaha.
Yeah, I think that's almost guaranteed at this point. I want to touch on the The bullpen. So Jamin Coleman's back is a huge, huge help to LSU. It's been very limited. We haven't seen a ton of success from him, but he did pitch good. But then again, I think it was Sunday that he pitched against Ole Miss. He did let up that 3-run home run. So he's still trying to find his groove, which is understandable. He hasn't pitched since early 2022. I want to talk about pitch calling also when Collins comes in. I understand the man's got the nastiest curveball on this side of the Mississippi River, but you can't throw 7 straight curveballs and expect somebody not to get a hit off of it. Wes Johnson has got to mix in the fastball a little more with him because you saw the pinch hitter come in on Sunday and or I'm sorry, against Nicholls State. He comes in, it's a tie ball game, and he's just hanging curveball after curveball after curveball. Eventually, the dude just sat and waited on one, drove it into center field, 2-run score. We drop our second midweek game last week against ULL, this week against Nicholls State. I'm not too concerned. It's midweek. We're resting our starters. We didn't have Trey Morgan play. We didn't have Tommy White play. I want to touch on that because Tommy, it was more of like a soreness thing, it sounded like, from Jay Johnson. So hopefully he's still questionable to return this weekend against Alabama. But Trey, there's been nothing said. Have you seen anything about why Trey Morgan's not in the lineup?
Jay Johnson is slowly turning into Brian Kelly talk when it comes to these press conferences. The reporters are asking the question, like, when is he going to be available? It's just, a side injury, something too major. Well, I don't know. I think that in the end, I think that both the guys that they sat, Tommy Tanks and also Trey Morgan, I'm surprised they didn't bench Gavin Dugas as well. He's been nursing that shoulder injury ever since he hurt it in game number 2 against Kentucky, but they ended up going with him, and good thing that they did against Nicholls. I know that they lost that game. It was just a weird and wacky game. I mean, I have never seen like a midweek team ever play
like
all-star defense.
Center top 10 plays.
They made so many Sports Center top 10 plays, especially the last one. But LSU really had too many blown opportunities on the offensive side, especially in the last out. Base running errors as well. You had, you sent Josh Pearson whenever the dude had it in his hands before he ran out of the bases, and then Jack Merrifield doesn't even know what he's doing and doesn't know like how many outs he is. I think honestly he thought that it was either going to be a drop ball, a single, and that he was going to be the game-winning score, or he thought that it was a 2 out. So whenever you're coming off the bench, you got to be ready, you got to be locked in, especially during the midweek. Now I know that a lot of people in the comments are going to be like, this is a midweek game loss, that it doesn't matter, but sometimes midweeks do matter, but in the end, in the grand scheme of things, SEC games is where you got to lock in and get loaded. But really, only thing that this affects is the RPI. LSU's RPI going into this game was a 3, and now it's a 4. But if you have a top 5 RPI, it's not going to matter in the end of it. You're going to be a top 8 national seed.
Especially when if you're finishing the season as a number 1 team ranked in the country.
If they get to 20 SEC wins, that will for sure be a lock to this team of hosting not only the regional and the super regional at the box.
For sure. The biggest thing with the midweek, and I understand people's concerns, like, oh, you've lost to Nicholls, you lost to ULL, it's more like a building momentum thing. Like, you shouldn't be losing to these teams. But you also got to think, we're not throwing our normal starting pitchers. Thatcher Hurd, I don't know.
He's running out of opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Jay letting them trying to figure out their midweek. I wouldn't trust him to come in an SEC series at this point, which really sucks because he started out the season really well.
Yeah.
He's just lost his mojo. So hopefully him and Wes Johnson can get in the lab and get that figured out. But it's just more like a momentum thing. You want to see your young guys go out there and play good and not lose to Nicholls State. I mean, I understand that defense against Nicholls State was the best I've ever seen. I mean, it was insane, especially the last play. I mean, kudos to the shortstop for that diving catch. I thought for sure that was a blooper. It was going to score 2. Jack Merrifield thought he was scoring on that play. It's just one of those things. You chalk it up. You don't want to lose SEC series. That's the biggest rule of thumb right now. You drop a midweek game, it is what it is. We got our next SEC series we'll get into right now. So LSU takes on Alabama. It's at the box this weekend, right, Tyler?
That is correct. Back at the box.
So the Tide comes to Baton Rouge. They are currently 9-9 in SEC play, sitting at 500, 30-12 overall. They did just win the series against Mississippi State last weekend. So they're playing with a little bit of fire. This was at the beginning of the season circled as supposed to be a pretty good matchup, but Alabama has just kind of fallen off. They do have a lot of veterans, which concerns me at this point in the season because that's who really leads your team to victory, especially if our guys our starters aren't healthy and we got some young guys out there. So what have you seen from the Crimson side, and what's your prediction for this weekend?
Yeah, coming off of a series win actually against Missouri, I think you got ahead of yourself. They went on the road to Columbia, got a series win. I think that the record doesn't really say much about this Alabama team. This Alabama squad is dealing with a lot of injuries, especially on the pitching side. They had a couple of their key starters go out, either having Tommy John surgery or just got shelved for the rest of the year. So I think that this LSU offense will come alive again in Alex Box Stadium. I think that the pitching is going to have to be dialed in once again because they have some veteran hitters. I think that Alabama has one of the most underrated players in Jim Jarvis. They have veteran talent. They did lose Zane Denton. We saw Zane Denton in the Tennessee series, so that was a huge loss for the Crimson Tide. But they still have, they are patient at the plate. So, LSU's pitchers, I mean, the 1 and 2 and the 3 starters, as long as you can throw strikes and not get behind these veteran hitters that can really they're not really a team that can put the ball out of the ballpark. They are just timely hits and just keep pouring it on, and they can build walks. But in the end, my prediction for this series, I just feel confident with this LSU team, even with the loss against Nichols in the midweek. I'm going to predict another sweep. I've been eyeing this series for the past couple of weeks. I think that going on the road against an Ole Miss team that was really overlooked, in my opinion. I know that they're 3-4 team, but Hunter Elliott was their number 1 starter going into the season. We just saw him. He only had 50 pitches in that game. He was out.
He walked 6 batters.
He was out in the second inning. So I just think that this LSU team, once it comes to SEC play, they just turn it on another level. I think we'll see Trey Morgan. He's going to be coming back. I think that Tommy White's going to be good. I think it's just really a day, giving you a couple of days of rest. So I think that this LSU team is going to be continued and locked in. I think that they're going to get a 3-0 sweep. It's going to be the same story in football.
I like it. So I'm predicting Paul Skeens' stat line Friday night. All right. I'm going season high, 14 strikeouts, 2 hits, no walks, no earned runs. He pitches 7 innings. And
he doesn't need a bounce back.
I think we bring in Griffin Herring to close out the night in the 8th inning and let him pitch 8-9, and he may let up a few hits, but I think we shut him out Friday night. I think we come out just on fire, kind of bad taste in our mouths from Nichols, and then having to battle from behind on Sunday against Ole Miss. I think the offense comes out swinging, and we get it done.
And that's what we saw that's why I'm not really worried. Last week, like you mentioned, we lost to ULL. You go on the road to Oxford against, not a great team, but a team that can beat you on any given night. They take care of business and sweep. So I think this is going to be the same scenario. You lose the midweek game on Nichols. You coming into the SEC series. It's a brand new weekend, brand new clean slate. I think that the Tigers take care of business.
Yeah, especially being back home. I mean, you just did your sweep in Oxford, and now you're back home in front of your home fans. You're feeling good. You're rested. Hopefully we can get all the starters playing. I'm hoping Tommy White and Trey Morgan, it's just a little bit of, hey, give them a break during the week and let's get back. The LSU actually didn't even practice today, Jay Johnson said. So just giving everybody a little bit of a breather. Come out Friday fresh and let's hit it. All right, we're going to switch from the diamond to the gridiron. We had the spring game last week. Brian Kelly's not a huge fan of the spring games. He doesn't want to show the tape to other players, don't want to risk injury. I get it. I understand. Of course, it was the path to the boot with the new center field logo. Big recruiting weekend. Had all the stars out, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Angel Reese, just trying to get these new recruits into town. The offense won, didn't they?
It was a tie between 32 to 32 tie.
With Ramos hitting that game-winning field goal. Really, the only good thing that came out of special teams. I'm a little concerned about special teams, but I want to pick our breakout football stars for next season. And I'm going with a guy who didn't have a ton of action in the spring game, but he had a great season last year for LSU. He had 10 touchdowns, 76 carries, 400 yards. Going with Noah Kane. I think it's year 2 at LSU. John Emery was kind of expected to be the guy. Had some academic issues. He's having more academic issues. Get this man a tutor. Get him in whatever class he needs to be in. He's been at LSU for like 6 years. I don't know how he still has to take classes. But I think with his absence, it's going to be a Noah Kane and Williams 1-2 punch here. And so I'm feeling like Noah Kane, he was always the red zone guy, but I could see him used more down as the main back guy and then put in. He had 10 touchdowns last year. Give him 17 this year. That's my prediction for Noah Kane as my breakout football star. Who's yours, Tyler?
Yeah, since you went on the offensive side of the ball, I'll go defensive side of the ball. And this was a guy that we hardly saw in the 2022 season. He got hurt on the first offensive drive in the Florida State game, and that was Mason Smith, the defensive tackle for the Tigers. And Smith had a phenomenal freshman season. He's going into a sophomore season in 2022. A lot of expectations. He was named a preseason All-American on the defensive list, and he tore his ACL. It was just a tragic injury, but you had guys step up behind him, especially the Missouri transfer at the defensive tackle as well. So I think that you're going to see a beast in the middle. I mean, if you see this guy, all the talks about Darnell Washington, guys, this guy is a monster in the middle for the defensive line. So I think that LSU's defensive line, you're losing BJ Ojulari on the edge. You're losing Ali Gay on the edge as well. So, but you're still bringing guys that have a lot of experience on the defensive interior. So I think that Mason Smith is going to have a really phenomenal season and put him on the first team All-American list.
I like it. He gets his revenge against Florida State first game of the year.
Yep, there you
It's
go.
way too early. We got 4 months still. We'll try to temper our excitement, but getting to watch the football game, the spring game this past weekend was what just builds it up. I mean, Jay Daniels, I've said it on our Sports Scramble podcast, I said he's a Heisman candidate. I think he comes out there and plays like an all-star, second year under Brian Kelly. He bulked up, 210 pounds. He's going to just bounce off the would-be tacklers. Looks like he's improved his accuracy and going through his looks. I mean, he wasn't just throwing the number one guy. He wasn't just taking off and running, which spring game didn't really expect him to run a lot. But I think he feels the competition from Garrett Nussmeier, and he realizes this is his make or break. This is his last year. He wants a real shot at being a first-round pick in the NFL draft. I think he's had good off-season work. His arms improved. His accuracy's improved. So I'm thinking Jane Daniels, Heisman candidate or Heisman finalist this year. So we'll see what happens, but I feel good about it. So let's get to our last segment, the Around Town News. We're going to use this segment to kind of just highlight anything going on with LSU and Baton Rouge in general, Louisiana. Tyler, what's your Around Town News?
Around Town News on the last week of April features the D1 Baseball's midseason field of projections. So shout out to D1 Baseball. They always put out great content like us. And in the Baton Rouge regional, your number one overall seed is your Fighting Tigers of LSU. They are the number one seed in the Baton Rouge bracket. And guess who had to play in the 4 seed? They get a team that just beat them the midweek, the Nichols Colonels. And then they also had number 2 seed Southern Miss. If you flash back to last year's regionals, Southern Miss did, in fact, beat LSU in that phenomenal Game 7. If you remember that one, Gavin Dugas hit that home run to tie it up, and then Southern Miss walked it off. Then you also have the 3 seed Southern Cal. Southern Cal is a historically good college baseball program. They won the most national championships out of anybody. And LSU's regional right now would be paired up against the number 16 seed, which is Duke. And they have a former Tiger on their roster, Giovanni DiGiacomo. So how do you think? What are you thinking about this regional at the midway point of the season?
I like our chances to get out of this pretty easily. I think you could definitely come in that first game and not even have to throw Paul Skeens. You could throw Ty Floyd to take on Nichols, and then really whoever USC or Southern Miss is who's going to face Paul Skeens. And we're probably going to get out of it pretty easily. I mean, I know as an LSU fan I'm biased, but that's definitely being the number 1 seed. You expect an easy regional. Pairing up with the Duke one would be interesting, especially Giovanni coming back to face his old teammate. There'll definitely be some more motivation there. But just looking at the D1 baseball predictions, I think I like our chances.
I agree.
So we appreciate everybody tuning into the first inaugural Bayou Bengal Bites rundown show. We're going to try to do these every week. And if you're looking for more sports news or sports LSU breakdown, check out our podcast over at Sports Scramble Podcast. We'll upload clips every week from that as well. And then also you can check out our network, Belly Up Sports. You can find wonderful, great content from all those content creators out there. Tyler, it was a pleasure. I'll see you next week.